Hey there, welcome to another Q&A session where I'm responding to questions in the comments about how to strengthen your story and navigate the publishing industry. First, I wanted to give a shout out to my amazing community of more than 24,000 subscribers. I never imagined that we would make the community this big or that my videos would reach this many people. So sincerely, thank you so much to each and every one of you, and I appreciate you so much. If you're new here and you haven't joined this amazing community yet, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you're down there, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button to help out with the YouTube algorithm and help my videos reach even more viewers. One more little piece of housekeeping. I have a free resource for all of my YouTube community. The link is in the description below to grab my free story self-assessment worksheet. It is a resource designed to help you identify the strengths and weaknesses in your own work, which I know can be such a challenge to do. Downloading that is going to sign you up for my newsletter, where I am interviewing publishing industry experts as well as published authors. I know many of you are looking for other pieces of advice and hearing from other perspectives, so that's why I created the newsletter, and I'm really enjoying connecting with these other experts and sharing their tips with you. If you want to go straight to the newsletter and check out the previous installments, go into the description below and you'll find the link. Without further ado, let's dive into the first question. Hi, Alyssa. I'm wondering what the normal protocol is when you're querying the same agent again for a second book. Should you mention you already queried them with another project before, or is that in bad taste? Alternatively, could it benefit for them to know we're determined and passionate enough to have finished work on a second project after the first one didn't work out? I have seen authors take both approaches here, so I really don't think you could go wrong. You could open up the query with a quick note saying that you did previously query the agent for a different project, but now you're working on this one, which is absolutely fine. And most agents are very open to seeing a different manuscript from authors who they have rejected before. That is very standard, and I don't see why that would change the agent's mind at all about your query. On the flip side, if you want to just query it totally fresh without any context, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to be honest with you in that the agent is not likely going to remember the previous query that you sent or necessarily recognize your name. Just because they have hundreds of queries in their inbox at any given time, it doesn't mean that they didn't look at your query carefully when they did review it. But unless you really had a back and forth with that agent or they gave you personal feedback on your work, it's not likely that it's going to ring a bell necessarily. So either method really works fine here. I will say, if you did have a back and forth with the agent, if they gave you some feedback that was clearly personal to your story, or they requested the full manuscript and then rejected it, definitely reference that when you query them again to jog their memory, because it is likely they will remember you from that project, and it'll be good to know from their perspective that you have something new in the works. In that case, they're likely going to be excited to see what else you have in store because they did go further with you that first time. Here's the next question. What's the difference between a query and a book proposal? This is a very important clarification, and I can totally see why these two terms are confusing if you are unfamiliar with the publishing industry and all of its very specific terminology. A query letter is the letter that you put together to approach literary agents and present your book project to them. That goes for whether you're presenting a children's picture book, an adult novel, or a work of self-help nonfiction. No matter what the book project is, it will require a query letter. And the query letter has some very specific elements that it must include, including a description about the book and typically a comparable titles section and an author bio. I have another video that breaks down all the elements of the query, so check that out if you're in the process of writing one. So how does that differ from the book proposal? The book proposal is a very specific document, typically only used for nonfiction book projects. And a proposal is typically used when you have not written the full manuscript yet. So when you are querying fiction, you will include the query letter, sometimes a synopsis of the full novel, as well as sample pages of the full manuscript, but the full manuscript will typically be complete already by the time you are querying. When it comes to nonfiction, the querying process looks a little bit different. You will still send a query letter, but instead of having the full manuscript complete, you will have a book proposal complete and typically a sample chapter or two, but not the full manuscript written already. The book proposal will be you outlining everything that the book is going to entail, Typically, you also include audience notes, marketing ideas, and a more robust outline of why you are the best person to write this nonfiction book. And that is what agents are going to evaluate along with your query and your sample chapters. There's a lot of guidance online about how to put together a book proposal and what all it needs to include. So if you're working on nonfiction and you haven't completed the manuscript yet, definitely check that out. We have time for one more question today. When an agent rejected your previous work but likes your latest one, what are the chances the agent would consider accepting the previous work? This is an interesting situation to be in, but it's certainly not unheard of. Typically, how this happens is you write a book and then you query an agent who you think would be a good match for it. They reject it. Then you write an entirely different book and you query that same agent. Maybe it's in the same genre, and therefore you feel like that agent would still be a good fit, and they love it. And they want to represent you now, specifically for the second book. Well, now what happens to that first book, right? So the first thing that would need to be considered here is the genre. Is the genre of the initial book something that they represent currently? It's possible that they rejected it to begin with because it is no longer something they are pursuing and no longer in their wheelhouse. So that's the first thing you will need to discuss with them. Is this genre something you're still interested in? If the answer is yes, then they rejected your book for another reason, right? They either didn't see a market for it or they thought it needed too much editorial work. So I would go to your agent and just be totally honest with them. Say, I'm still interested in pursuing this initial book I queried you with, but can you give me some more insight on why you rejected it? And if you think maybe we could work together to get it to a place where it could be published. A good agent is going to want to work with you through multiple book projects. And if they see your potential as a writer, they will want to support you, whether on this previous book project or on your next book project. They're going to be your partner in figuring out what is best for your career, which books they think are going to do the best for you, and which ones are worth pursuing. It could be the case that they have a lot of editorial notes for that first book, and you could maybe work something out where you work on those revisions and see if the agent then thinks it's strong enough to present to publishers. But it all comes down to being open and honest with your agent about your goals and hearing them out as well. Thanks so much for all of the questions that were submitted. And if you have something you'd like to ask, drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue for my next session. Before you sign off, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and grab your free story self-assessment worksheet in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.